Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson and welcome to Affordable Housing Matters, a show developed in order to educate the viewers in our local community with the information needed to attain an affordable living. August 29 will mark the 10-year anniversary of the most terrible natural disaster to ever occur in our New Orleans metro area, Hurricane Katrina. Tonight we will talk to two organizations from the lower Ninth Ward to discuss rebuilding and the homeowners' climate in one of New Orleans' hardest hit areas. We will also be joined by the COO of New Orleans Redevelopment Authority to educate us on what they are doing to catalyze the revitalization of this city. We have a great show planned for you tonight, so please stay with us.
Saturdays at 4:30 p.m. on WLAE.
Lower9.org is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the long-term recovery of the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans, Louisiana, in the wake of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And joining me now to tell what else they do is their executive director, Laura Paul.
Hello.
To talk about a big job, and you're smiling.
I am. I love a challenge.
You obviously do, judging by that smile on your face. What does Lower9 do?
Lower9.org is a rebuild organization, so we focus exclusively on rebuilding homes. We're a very small organization with a very small budget, so we decided very early on to focus in a narrow geographical area, and the area we decided to focus on was the lower Ninth Ward.
Why?
It's the hardest hit and the slowest recovering community in the Gulf Coast region.
In the Gulf Coast region, right.
34% population return to date, and the city average is over 88%.
Wow.
And that includes the lower Ninth Ward, so it's higher.
That's a big difference.
It is an enormous difference.
So there's an obvious challenge for affordable housing.
Oh, goodness, yes. Yeah. And the thing about the lower Ninth Ward and the reason that we do what we do is we had one of the highest rates of African American home ownership in the nation prior to Katrina. 59% of the lower Ninth Ward was homeowners, and 56% of them owned their homes outright. They've been passed down from generation to generation. A lot of people didn't even pay a mortgage. You know, you can live affordably below the poverty line, as 40% of the population there did, if you don't have an issue with affordable housing. But it becomes an issue when something like Katrina happens and then you have to start paying rent to live somewhere else in the city while you're waiting to get back on your feet and get back in your home. So if you do the math, if you take a very modest average rental income, a rental payment of say $750 a month, this August 29th, a family that isn't back in their home yet will have paid $90,000 in rent.
Wow. That's huge.
It is huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot more money than I have at my disposal. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I think you speak for the both of us in that regard. So, how does the Lower9.org organization accommodate people who are looking to come back home?
Right. We only work with people who lived in the lower Ninth Ward prior to Katrina.
Okay.
So by definition,
you're not talking about moving new people in.
No, sir. No, sir. We may do that down the road in order to bring the neighborhood back to some level of respectable, population. But for now, we really are focusing on people who lived there before. That means that by definition, our demographic is 98.1% African American, and over 60% of the people live below the average mean income of the country.
So, how do you accomplish that? How do you go about getting them back?
Right, so what we do is we ask that the homeowner come to the table with materials funding in a lot of cases.
Materials funding.
Okay. So if they can come to the table with, say, some of their road home settlement or some money that they've managed to squirrel away from working hard, we can take that money, apply it to materials, and then apply volunteer labor to the project. It brings the cost to rebuild down to about 1/3 of open market rate.
How successful have you been toward that end?
We've been very successful. We brought 75 families home to fully rebuilt homes. We've done repair and renovation projects on over 200 more properties. If you give an average amount of residents of 2 per home, which is low, you're looking at our having brought back over 10% of the population.
So what's your goal?
Our goal is to get to a point where we are no longer getting calls from pre-Katrina residents saying they wish to return and don't have the resources to do it. We are going to continue to work until we stop getting those calls, and we're getting 2 and 3 a week.
So who's available to help people get the kind of materials together that they need to get help from you, or are you involved in that process as well?
We're a little bit involved in that process. We have great support from a company called James Hardie, who are siding manufacturers, and they donate pretty much all the siding we use. They're very, very generous with us. So we're able to do some work with homeowners with donated materials, and we are able to fully fund 2 to 3 projects annually, which means we cover materials and labor.
How would you go about increasing the number of projects you're able to fund?
Well, we would be, if we had more resources, and by resources I just mean funding, not to be crass, but it does come down to money, then we wouldn't, to be honest with you, we wouldn't do anything too terribly differently than what we do now. The volunteer labor model works. We use unskilled people under skilled supervision. We've had volunteers from 30 different countries come and work with us. Right now I've got volunteers from South Korea, the Netherlands, France, Germany.
And they're still coming.
And the United States.
10 years later.
Absolutely
they're still
they are.
Coming.
Yeah, now I tell you, it's good that we're in New Orleans. People want to come here anyway, and that helps us. But yeah, absolutely. These volunteers we work with every day are heroes, every one of them. Some of them come and stay for years. I volunteered myself for 14 months when I first got down here.
So what's the first step for me? I'm a former 9th Ward resident, hypothetically speaking, and I have not come back home, but I want to. So what's my first step?
Just call us. We're available to talk and to listen and to visit your property and take a look at the condition it's in and do a scope of work, get an idea of how much in terms of resources it's going to take, talk about ways to finance recovery, talk about what our contribution is. It's an easy process, and it's one that we take really seriously. The application itself, just as a first step, is only 1 page. We decided to go in the direction of very simple process and streamlined.
That's an incentive.
Very little in the way of bureaucracy. Absolutely it is. So there's a 1-page application which we sit with the client and fill out, and then we go take a look at the property, and then we go from there.
What's the specifics, some of the crucial specifics of that application?
Your name, your address.
Of course.
The address of the home you want rebuilt. We do ask, as I said, that people lived in the lower 9th Ward prior to the storm, and we ask that they use the home we rebuild as their primary residence. Once we're done, that's it.
So that's it. So this process would take less than 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how many
Which is a refreshing change, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So how many people do you have on the waiting list?
We have over 200 families who at some time have expressed interest in working with us. Not all of those families have the resources they need to return, but we do check in with people regularly, and we do try to attract funding to the organization that we can pass along to our clients.
What are you doing about funding? I understand you have a campaign.
We do. We have what's called the hashtag 50 States campaign, which is primarily a social media campaign. We've actually identified ambassadors in every state in the union, in some cases several ambassadors. So we have over 100 people working across the country, drawing attention to the need in the community, drawing attention to the organization. We're hoping to raise $1,000 in each state for a total of $50,000 in funding, which is just about 1/3 of our annual operating budget.
Yeah, well, that's a modest goal, and
we're a modest organization.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing great work.
We are.
It's great having you here, too.
It's lovely to meet you.
All right. Coming up next, Brenda Breaux of New Orleans Redevelopment Authority. Don't go far.
Has unleashed complete and utter devastation on New Orleans.
Nonprofits have responded immediately, helping to rebuild homes and lives.
More than 50 schools are scheduled to reopen by the end of the month.
So many have contributed to the astounding progress of this region.
I've never been more optimistic and hopeful about the city than I am today.
Since the storm, nonprofits and their supporters have worked tirelessly to turn things around. Thank you, all of you. before, during, after, always.
NORA is committed to the development of residential neighborhoods to ensure that New Orleans remains a desirable and vibrant place to live for residents of all income levels. With me this evening is the Chief Operating Officer responsible for their day-to-day operations, Miss Brenda Breaux. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Well, this is great to have you. How are you feeling? Because you got a big challenge ahead of you.
Oh, I'm feeling great, and I think I'm up for the challenge.
You think you're up for the challenge?
Absolutely.
Well, I know there are a lot of people, especially those people looking for affordable housing, who are glad to hear you say that. First of all, let's start from the top. What is NORA?
NORA is the city's redevelopment agency. It was created by the state legislature back in 1969. NORA has been tasked with serving as a redevelopment catalyst in some of our vulnerable neighborhoods in transitions. We have 3 core areas that we focus on: affordable housing. We provide for commercial gap financing in some of our commercial corridors, and we're also responsible for land stewardship. Those are our 3 core business areas, and from those, we attempt to change neighborhoods that are in transitions to help to provide for housing opportunities for our populations that are in need of affordable housing.
Of course, the biggest topic these days in social settings and others as well is what you just mentioned, the last thing you just mentioned, affordable housing. Somebody threw me for a loop. I was telling you before the show began. Not too long ago, we were sitting around having a conversation, and this topic came up. In fact, it was the primary topic, and the person put the question to me, what is affordable housing? So what is affordable housing, Ms. Breaux?
Affordable housing, to be quite frank with you, is what I can afford to pay for housing in the neighborhood that I choose to live in. And with that comes a whole lot of other decisions that I may need to make and should be making. HUD defines affordable housing based on the income and the income guidelines. They use the average median income of across the country, and in turn, from there, you look at what I can afford and what I can afford to pay for it. And sometimes over the course of the past several years, we've seen that individuals in the city and the cost of housing has gone up. It has gone up tremendously. And we look at what individuals are paying for housing based on what their income is, but whether or not their cost burden. Cost burden was when I'm paying 30% or more of my income is for housing and housing needs. And when I when I go to 50%, that means that I'm excessively cost burdened. That means it costs me a lot to live in the neighborhoods that we want to live in. And I believe that people in the city have choices of where they want to live and what neighborhoods they want to live in. And that our job at NORA is to provide for levels of affordability for our population and for individuals so they can stay in some of those neighborhoods that they want to live in.
So what projects are currently underway by NORA to meet the needs of people searching for affordable housing?
Well, we were fortunate enough at NORA to be the recipient of about a $30 million grant. With that, we were able to develop 468 houses throughout the city. We were able to do that. We refer to that as our neighborhood stabilization program. We worked in neighborhoods in Central City. We worked in the Lower Ninth Ward. We worked in Gentilly, in the Dillard University area, Pontchartrain Park, and some portions of New Orleans East. We worked in those areas and worked with nonprofit partners. We provided land that we received from that were former road home properties that we received. We also provided subsidy in the form of writing down the mortgage or the value of the house. We provided for some developer fees so that they would developers who would be doing this business. We know that this business is a hard business, but we know that it is the lifeblood of this city. And affordable housing, as you just mentioned, is the topic across the city. One of the things that NORA has been doing is not only concentrating on the housing component, we've been concentrating and working on the commercial component as well.
How important is that to the dynamic of affordable housing?
Oh, Norman, that is critical. While we are investing in putting dollars in our neighborhoods, the city is investing dollars in infrastructures. There are buildings and there are commercial corridors. For instance, if you go down Aretha Castle Haley and would have gone down Aretha Castle Haley 5 years ago, you wouldn't believe where it is today. And that's a lot has to do with Nora's investment in that, in the form of commercial gap financing. We financed and helped the Myrtle Banks building and school that's going up with Jack and Jake's. We, Cafe Reconcile, Neighbor Good Work Networks down there. We also just recently closed on something with the New Orleans Mission, recognizing that that's the gateway. But the commercial component and the lifeblood of a neighborhood is not just only the housing component, it's also the economics. And also economics speaks to income, what individuals are making and what they can afford to pay for their housing. But we're excited about the work that we have done thus far. We have partnered with some great nonprofit developers to provide for affordable housing. In some areas, after the storm, there were areas of the city that individuals would not invest in. Nora took that as an opportunity and a challenge with some of those neighborhood stabilization dollars, and we in turn provided land and provided financing so that a lot of those neighborhoods in Gentilly that are now thriving and have really been the linchpin for thriving and moving those neighborhoods over.
How does one qualify for affordable housing with Nora?
What we do is that we have, as a matter of fact, we have 5 houses that we have self-developed ourselves immediately behind our office building in the 1300 block of South Saratoga. We're making that available for individuals who earn up to 120% of the area median income. That would be someone with a family of 4 that makes as little as maybe $35,000, $40,000, and that with some subsidy that we in turn provide that. They've got to have home buyer education. We work with them on working on their credit. All of those things are critical for individuals when they're talking about affordable housing. But I've got to mention, though, is that not only do we recognize that people are interested in home ownership, but rental as well. Those are choices that individuals make, whether or not I want to buy, whether or not I want to rent. We have participated in projects with Unity for the Homeless, with providing for permanent supportive housing. We've worked through some of our other developers who have worked for rental, provided rental housing. We've worked with Harmony, we've worked with Jericho Road, we've worked with Providence, all of those in the form of providing either cash, in the form of financing, and or land.
Okay, so as we close with your segment, what's the best way to find information about Nora?
You can go on our website at noraworks.org. Feel free to do that. Nora is also participating in a housing plan that'll be developing a housing plan for the course of the next 10 years and to talk about what housing would look like in the course of the next 10 years.
All right, Ms. Breaux, it's been informative having you as a guest.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. When we return, our conversation will pick up with another organization in the Lower Ninth Ward dedicated to giving eligible Lower Ninth Ward families the maximum grant help to get them back home. Please stay tuned.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
The House the 9 program was put into place to help find and bring all displaced homeowners who want to return home back to the Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans. Here to tell us how this program is accomplishing this is Ms. M.A. Sheehan, Director of House the 9. That's an interesting title.
House the 9.
House the 9.
And then we also ask the question, House the 9. How is the 9?
How is the 9? Okay, so it's sort of a play on words.
It's a play on words.
It's great to have you here, especially to talk about what matters, and that is affordable housing. So what percentage of the Ninth Ward has recovered?
37% repopulation rate as of June 30th.
And how does that relate to affordable housing?
Well, before Hurricane Katrina, 59% of the homeowners, 59% of the Lower Ninth Ward was homeowners. And of those, 56% had no mortgages. And these were working class people. So that was seriously affordable housing for them. You had no mortgage. The average income was about $25,000, and you could be a homeowner for that. So, and now without those homes, they don't have affordable housing. You know, the cost of rent has increased so much in the Lower Ninth, in the city, and they haven't been able to replace the homes that they owned, and so they really don't have affordable housing anymore.
What does House the Nine do about that?
So we have a three-pronged program. The first is the hardest part, which is to try to locate money to bring them home. Mm-hmm. And there's two places that we're looking for that. The first is the Road Home program, which everybody knows was funded by HUD to try to bring homeowners back to Louisiana. Still has $119 million sitting in the program.
It still has $119 million?
$119 million that can only be used for Louisiana homeowners who aren't home yet.
I have to ask the question, why is this? I mean, 10 years hence.
We've been working for 4 years to try to get them to figure out a way to release that money. Took us 2 years, and we got some policy changes through the Road Home program and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And they decided to give more money to people who had contractor fraud, or their insurance proceeds went directly to their mortgage companies, or theft, or damage by a subsequent storm. But a little bit of money has started to trickle out as a result of that, but for most people it's not enough. And the reason is because people had to spend that money on rent, on living expenses. You know, if you didn't get home for 10 years and you didn't have a mortgage, well, now you're spending rent. So we're asking HUD for some additional policy changes, which is cost of interim housing that you spent while you were displaced, and the other one is their documentation requirements, which a lot of people will be familiar with from the original Road Home program, trying to prove that you lived there before the storm, trying to prove ownership, getting your succession done. Those documentation requirements are still getting in people's way. So we're asking for 2 policy changes from HUD. And then we have, we're in touch with 200 Lower Ninth Ward homeowners who aren't home yet. And so then we're doing the case management to get the money to the people. So those are we find the money, we find the homeowners, we connect the money to the homeowners.
So what percentage of that $119 million are you looking to obtain for House the Nine?
Well, for our homeowners, our own personal funding is a whole other thing.
For homeowners, yeah.
For homeowners in the Lower Ninth Ward, I think that if we can, there are about 700 families who aren't home yet. I'm estimating that about 350 of them still want to come home. That would cost about $20 million.
$20 million.
Right.
All right. Doesn't seem insurmountable when you're talking about $119 million, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. And also 350 families, it's such a concrete number to turn around an entire neighborhood and to, a historic neighborhood with this high home ownership rate, this generational wealth that was passed down through the family that's just wiped out. You know, it's just like urban renewal all over again. It's just like building a highway through a neighborhood. Here's an African-American neighborhood that's just lost its wealth. 350 families is all we need to kind of transform that.
So given this challenge, and it's somewhat uphill, to say the least, right?
Right.
What's the prospect of full recovery and the time parameter for that?
So in the last year, 150 households have returned to the Lower Ninth Ward.
That's encouraging.
Yes. So we feel like it's actually a moment of forward momentum. And the other thing that's happened in the last year or so is the city has made a lot of infrastructure investments. So we have a new community center, we have a firehouse, we have a police substation. FEMA money is fixing up the roads. We've got some new parks, we have a high school. So there's a forward momentum. And that's one of the things we really want to stress is 10 years out, people can't turn their eyes away because we're really starting to make a difference. And that will have to be combined. Not everybody wants to return home, so it'll have to be combined with newcomers to the neighborhood also. And these are 2 things we want to work with the city on, is bringing new people to the neighborhood and finding a way to fill those gaps that are left by the HUD program to get the old-time homeowners home.
So image-wise, what is there left to overcome? You talk about this area being maybe less attractive for some people.
Well, it's because of the low population rate mostly, that close to the river, on the sliver by the river in the Holy Cross neighborhood, they're over 60% back. They're looking really good. The further you get back to Florida Avenue and the Bayou, so much vacant land, so many overgrown lots. Nora owns like 1,000 lots down there, so it's just that there's so much vacant land.
So you're telling me that there is optimism for affordable housing in the Lower 9?
Absolutely.
All right, so how does one get in touch with what's the best way for one to get in touch with House of the 9? Okay,
so we have a website, www.lower9thwardhomeowners.org. Or our phone number is 504-943-6000. We have case managers, housing advocates who will answer your questions. We also have a fundraising page, www.razu.com/story. Just Google Lower Ninth Ward homeowners and it'll come up to you. And that's one of the big issues, is that as the eyes of the world turn away, we're really worried, where are the resources going to come from? So we're launching a campaign called 100 by 100. If 100 people gave or raised $100 a month, we would be fully staffed and able to do everything that's needed for our homeowners.
Well, Ms. Sheehan, thank you for being here, and I hope your energy rubs off on the rest of us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Stay right there.
Oh, okay.
We'll have more Affordable Housing Matters when we come back. Don't go far.
A new team, new editorial resources.
The same objective analysis of the top business news of the day.
Every weeknight, complete market coverage.
With the business and economic stories that are crucial to you.
Nightly business report.
Weeknights at 5:30 p.m. on WLAE.
Friday, August 29th marks a decade since the tragedy of Hurricane Katrina. Our hearts and prayers are still with the persons and families who were and are still affected by the devastation of that day. For those who wish to remember loved ones and celebrate the future, here are a list of events that are planned around our area. The Canal Street wreath-laying ceremony, 8:30 a.m. at the Hurricane Katrina Memorial, 5056 Canal Street in New Orleans. The St. Bernard Day of Reflection, 8:30 a.m., Chalmette High School, 1100 East Judge Perez Drive, Chalmette. The Lower Ninth Ward Commemoration, 8:30, 10 a.m. on the corner of North Claiborne Avenue and Tennessee Street. The 9th Annual Katrina March and Second Line, 10 a.m., starting at Jordan Avenue and Galvez Street in the Lower 9. And the Delgado Desire Campus ribbon cutting, starting at 9:52 at 3227 Louisa Street. Those are just a few of many memorials scheduled to happen August 29th. We would like to thank all of the guests that we've had on this evening, and remember, for more information on our guests on this show and others, please visit WLAE.com and click on the Affordable Housing Matters link. There you can get in contact with every guest we've had on our program. Also, tell us what you want to see on Affordable Housing Matters by emailing us at ahm@WLAE.com. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Norman Robinson. Have a good night.